Alrighty, what's up guys? Today we will be talking about how to crush 6 samurai decks. Now a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, I made a how to crush Dark World decks, and I've received a lot of video requests on how to beat 6 Sams, because this is a deck that's probably tier 1 if not tier 1.5, and it's not really on everybody's radar. So without wasting any more time, let's get straight into the cards that are basically a key and a vital point to winning with 6 Sams, and I'm going to give you some tips on how to stop certain cards, because when you're playing Yu-Gi-Oh! You can't stop everything. There's certain things that you have to stop. So, let's start. Elder of the 6 Samurai. When people special summon this card, they're almost always going to use this card in conjunction with Kagemusha of the 6 Samurai. When that happens, if you have a solemn warning, for those of you who do, you want to wait for them to synchro with these two cards. You don't want to have solemn warning on this card because that's pretty bad. You want to save that warning for legendary 6 Samurai Shien. However, if they're going for Shien and let's say you have a bottomless, I don't suggest you use that bottomless because Shien's just getting negated. In my opinion, when you're playing against 6 Samurais, I highly suggest that you use bottomless on this card. Because this card says when this card is sent to the graveyard, when it's destroyed by your opponent's card effect, target 1 6 Samurai monster and add that card to your hand. But I know that bottomless would basically help him get the plus anyways, because it's still destroyed by a card effect. You want to get rid of this card because every time you destroy this card, they're almost always going to use his effect to bring himself back. And since he's not going to be in the graveyard, and since he's going to be in the remove pile, he's not going to come back. So he would have to use his effect on an inferior monster. Now, if there's another monster that you want to get rid of, let's say a legendary 6 Samurai Kizan, which is basically the beater of the deck, then I suggest you do so. But when it comes to effect failure, and when it comes to Maxi, those cards should always be used on Kageki, because Kageki is the one who basically special summons the lower level 4 6 Samurai or not. And the thing is when you have these two monsters, or these 3 monsters on the field, they're all relatively weak. So your opponent, even if they get Maxi, or if they get Veilered, they're kind of screwed. Because if you max see them, they don't have anything else they can do because they have these little wimpy monsters on the field. And if you use effect failure on this guy, they're basically dead because they're going to have a 200 attack power monster on the field. So that's what I suggest you use to stop these cards. Now, Kizan, I can't really give any specific advice on this because this is really just a beater. My strategy is basically designed to stop him from being as effective as he is. This is all like a process. You can't think of it as like I guess you can say, one way to stop 6 Sams. It's kind of like a certain process that you have to use your cards. Now, we all know that Gateway is probably their promo card, if not the promo card, next to Shien. These are the most important cards in 6 Sams. This is how you stop Gateway. When you're playing against 6 Sams, if you have Mystical Space Typhoon, if you have Heavy Storm, do not just use them like that, especially when Shien's on the field. If you have a double MST, or if you just have one MST and they don't have Shien, which is preferable in this situation, you want to use MST and chain it to the activation of Gateway. That way they get rid of both of their counters and essentially get nothing for it. That's what I usually do to beat 6 Sams, and I've tested it on Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro. It works unless the system's screwed up. That's my strategy for beating 6 Sams. Always chain MST to Gateway. One of the problems with a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! players is that they don't necessarily set MST. MST is a great card to set for multiple reasons, and I'll probably make another video going into that because it's another topic. But you want to MST Gateway. Now, it's very similar to Shien's Dojo. Now, when it comes to Shien's Dojo, what you want to do is you probably want to MST it, but what I suggest you do is you MST it once they have a lot of counters on it, because this card is a lot slower than Gateway. Gateway gets its plays off a lot faster. When it comes to Shien's dojo, you kind of want them to build a couple of counters and then chain MST so they can't do anything with it. And you want to chain it to when they're about to use it too, because you don't want to MST something that's useless on the field. Dojo's usually in Six Samurai decks. This card probably doesn't get as much play as, let's say, the other main Samurai cards, but it still gets quite a bit of play. Now, when it comes to Smoke Signal, this card is probably one of the best searchers in their deck, if not the best searcher, next to Gateway, of course. They usually use this card to go for Kageki, or they're going to go for Kagemusha. When that happens, I suggest that you have a Thunder King in your side deck. You don't have to be like me and main it, but you can probably side in 1 or 2 Thunder Kings to slow down their deck when they're using Shien Smoke Signal. Because what they're always going to do is they're going to go for this guy or this guy, because these guys always make Shien. When that happens, you want to, I guess you can say, slow down the search, kind of like Stratos in that situation. So when they get the monster, they're going to have to get it by drawing it instead of getting them that easy search, because Six Samurais are a deck that pluses a lot. And you have to slow down their pluses, or with Max C, you want to keep up with their pluses. Now, this is the card that you're probably going to be confused by what I'm about to say, but I suggest that you just let them use this card. I know it's a +2, but you're better off letting them get the plus, because there's too many other ways that they can get plus, like with Gateway, with this card, that you kind of want to save your plays for. Now, I guess if it's late in a duel and you're top decking, you might want to MST this card, but in most cases, if it's at the beginning of the duel, don't really respond to this. Maxis and Veilers are really effective against 6 Sams. I know they're better against windups, but they're pretty effective against Sams. If you have an MST and your opponent is setting a back row in 6 Samurais, I can almost guarantee you that 99% of the time it's going to be this card. This card is designed to protect Shien. So what you do is you have to figure out a way to get rid of Shien. That should be your #1 priority. What I suggest you do is torrential the monsters that are about to make Shien. That's my preference to beating Sams if you're not using an Apocalypse deck. My deck has other methods, but I suggest you torrential the monsters that are about to synchro. I suggest you bottomless either the Kizons, because they're going to become big beaters, or you bottomless the Grandmasters. And in very rare cases, you should do the Veiler bottomless torrential, or Veiler, I guess you could say, Mirror Force if they decide to attack, on Shien. Because we all remember chains resolve backwards. So the first thing to happen is the summon of Shien, right? So what you want to do is you want to chain MST and then chain bottomless. Because, no, I'm sorry, you want to chain bottomless and then chain MST. Because, like I said, the last thing to happen activates first. So you Veiler them, they get the no effect, and then you bottomless. Sometimes it's going to minus yourself a little bit, but that's a strategy to get rid of Shien. You have to get rid of Shien. Once you get rid of Shien, the duel is A-okay. It's not that hard to beat them. And you also have to make sure you set your MSTs, because once they go with Gateway, you don't want to have an MST in your hand that's just going to be sitting there dead. You have to get rid of Gateway once and for all. I've seen some 6 Samurai decks that use Magical Citadel of Endymion to even get Gateway back. It's rare, but it sometimes happens. You need to make sure that they don't get their Gateway. You need to make sure that they don't have Shien. And you have to make sure that if you are in any situation where they have backwards, you have to understand 6 Samurais, they only probably would use the Solemn Brigade and maybe this weird card that I don't feel like pronouncing its name. These are the only traps that they usually run. Now, one time I lost a duel because the 6 Samurai used Magic Cylinder, which completely got me off guard. But in most cases, these are the cards that are probably going to be used in the 6 Samurai deck. Last thing I'm going to point out is that a lot of times 6 Samurais like to make Naturia Barkion, or Naturia, what's the other one? Naturia Beast or Naturia Barkion as a replacement for legendary 6 Samurai Shien. And that's fine because these cards are not as deadly. What you want to do is you want to use monster cards that are going to stop these cards. So believe it or not, don't be like me, but you can side in a Snowman Eater. Maybe Snowman Eater can be sided in and stop these two cards. It can also force them to get rid of their other samurai monsters if you're targeting Shien. It's going to force them to use their plays, like using Masakani Magatama. Yes, I said it. So basically, guys, just watch out for all of these cards. If you listen to my advice, make sure you MST the gateway. Make sure you Veiler this card. Make sure you bottomless this card in most cases, if you can. And that's basically it, guys. Have a happy new year.